When rallied, the French are starting to try to coordinate their forces. I keep forgetting to make these rolls at the end of the combat, and on the next activation or whatever I'm doing, usually at least, I think, I've been catching it and making the rolls. It should be happening right after the combat, but, it doesn't really have too much effect, although it may impact some of the post-combat decisions. But last time I know I didn't have any extra movement points to shift in. Anyway, that means another roll for initiative, but I think I did almost nothing yesterday, if not nothing, and I may have done that battle. And now today, again, I spent several minutes because I had to realize, I realized that I forgot to put all the core that the French get as reinforcements. They don't get anything in them, but they're extra organizational containers that I can put out there. Now, the French have a lot of core, but the expectation is that they lose some of them. The Prussian core come back, I think, rather than whatever historical value there is to keeping the correct numbering, it might have made sense to just refresh the core. Oh, that's another question. What's on the back of these? No. So the back of these say no assault penalty. This is an opportunity wasted in terms of, that's a counter that could have contained a railhead or something like that instead, because by removing that counter, you're kind of saying, well, there is no penalty any longer. So if I have that counter on the sheet, I'm going to be more confused than if I remove the counter, is basically my thinking. And for a game that seems pretty parsimonious in its use of the counters, at least in certain ways, and certainly in the use of tracks, this is maybe not perfect. Differential is only 2 points. The Prussians push their third army altogether a little bit closer. Very slow movement in this, especially when you have any kind of concentration of forces. And the fact that I moved off the rail line didn't help either. And the French entrenched over here. Now, I did some interesting points about creating the emergency reinforcements. For infantry, at the very least, you can build up your points. Cav and the frontiers, you have to just throw all the points in at once, which means the huge die roll. But for infantry, and reserve infantry, you can accumulate. And the point is, if you're going to have reserve infantry in your army, it might as well be mostly reserve infantry in your army. But if you can keep your army untainted by them, that is a pretty good thing, I guess. The Prussians are actually limited to the amount that they can assign outside their borders. And I'm not sure where I am on that limit, to tell you the truth, because I think I put some here in Sauerbruck, and I'm thinking that's within Prussia's borders, although it's actually Bavaria, so I don't know. And but anyway, it would have been possible for the French to start diverting some of their IPs over. But the thing is, the turn, the turn's not going to end without generating more points or without. So there's kind of this advantage to this. I don't want to do anything, which is seldom really available to you over in the Victory Games game, but in this one, it seems to be, always there. All right, my battery's almost dead after putzing around, I think, about a day without playing. I'm getting one impulse a day. Not because they're all that long. They are long, especially the early ones. Now I'm getting more of a feel, but now I'm a little befuddled. I just did a really quick impulse. Just 1 point in favor of the Prussians, and you can see they started building some infantry, regular infantry. The French, on the other hand, have been pulling mobilized units in, and they took another one because they won the initiative here. But they've got 6 points they've got to spend, and that's not easy. I could start building some infantry, get more reinforcements on the map, and that's probably what I'm going to do. Unless I have somewhere to. I don't really need to dig in there. That's a fortress. The problem is, and there's a reorg type of thing, so I'll look into that. But the real problem is, these corps, if I move them forward without activating an army to cover them, and they get intercepted, they're just going to be hanging out there, and it's going to be a problem. And then, of course, then the Prussians get the next activation. This is something that's not far from problems that happen in the Civil War that, just kind of handcuff you. You're sitting there and you're like, geez, I don't want to move, In this case, I'm not in my optimal defensive position. I can probably move to here because the First Army, I don't think is able to cut that zone of influence. I think they can charge through that zone of influence, but it's going to cause them real problems. But maybe not if they get the next activation. But if I do this early, then I can react with my later points in the activation to whatever the Prussians do and kind of cut them off. So I'm probably safe moving to here. But that's only a 1 hex movement. And it's like, oh. But, yeah, I mean, what I'd really like to do is be right up here. But if I move in there, the Prussians are gonna grab me, I guess. Maybe, but the thing is, I've started setting up this defensive line, and I can't really afford to just abandon it to be encircled or anything like that. So I really do have to kind of protect it. So yeah, I've got an interesting choice here. Von Steinwehr is actually very good at reacting as long as he wants to intercept an attack, and that's exactly what he wants to do here, sort of. So the French moved into here. Now they've been paused, and 2 movement points have been used just in case they want to do something. I've got 6. I got a 1 hex reaction. So if I could reach these guys and attack them, I would actually be the defender. I misread that. If, however, I move in here and hit the Army of the Rhine, I'm the attacker, and I probably want to do that, although it may exceed my size. So now it's time to start playing count the factors. So I've got 2 factors here, and then I've got 2 corps I can't really read. You probably remember them better than I do, because, well, maybe not, because this is a new video. So that's 2 and 3 corps, and that's got 3, 5... 11 factors, so 14 factors or so. I don't know how much that matters. And then I can look and see if these corps are part of the First Army, but I don't think so. I think they're part of the Second. So, I'm not gonna do that work, because if I'm wrong, it sucks, of course. But the game makes you do so much busy work. So now I have just the 7th Corps and a Cav division. And that's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I've got to start being offensive, though, or I've got to continue being offensive. I'm going to get the reaction afterwards. I don't think the French are going to be able to rally an army if I hit it and come back. So I guess we have a fight coming ahead to us. I'm not really thrilled with this, but I rolled the reaction. Well, I can roll. On a 4, 5, or 6, I don't have to go. On a 1 through 3, I have to move closer to the enemy. I have to move closer. Now, I could move just into here. Oh, I don't know if I really like that. I think I like moving into here too. I don't think I can bring these guys along because they're demoralized. I'm not, because there's a penalty for a demoralized force reacting, and I didn't apply it. There's one of these damn little tiny things that I can't see. If the map was white with colored brown and green terrain on it, I could see it, perhaps the way I do over on Civil War, of course, with the clusters of pieces. Maybe not, but these tiny little hedgerows and stuff, well, I couldn't see it, so I end up having to react into there, which is definitely not where I want to be. I was mistaken, and there's just so many little things here. I've got Cav with me. Prussian Cav, not French Cav, Prussian and Bavarian Cav have a 2-hex zone of influence range. That adds another point to my reaction roll, so now I have a 2-point reaction. So I have my choice of going into one of these two. I could also go part way down the line. I don't get to trace supply here because there'll be a zone of influence in the way. So in here indeed we go. This was a horrible situation for the Prussians to get themselves into. They were attacking. They got no artillery bonus to begin with, which usually is what saves their ass here. But they were attacking over here, but column shifts got them down to the worst table. They used Cav superiority, losing a Cav to get themselves up to 1-2. They took one, or they caused one casualty, took a D3 themselves. The effects of the battle were not as bad as they could possibly be, but they were close. The rolls weren't, they were average. The Prussians actually rolled an 8, and the French a 6, so, but no attacker failure. They just missed that. There was casualty checks, nobody died. And for the defender impact, they got the maximal value, so they tried to force another round of combat since the Prussians are already demoralized. Well, the Prussians did a Cav death ride, got out of there, but that's an automatic loss. I don't want to leave this hex, that's good, but it does mean that I can keep spending movement points here, and I'm going to sneak up into this hex because there's just no way that Prussian army can't react to attack. Okay. I have some post-combat stuff possibly to handle. I'm trying to think what. No, I don't think there is. I'm thinking the command stuff. And that's going to be the end of the French initiative expenditure to move those 2 corps. What that means is I'm still up here. I had 6 points to spend. I'm still up here with more. Now I'm going to fortify this line here for a couple more, but I don't know what I'm going to do with the rest, so I got to figure something out. Losses, largely, other than the Cav losses taken off of the green troops, makes sense because now more of them are battle hardened and they get up in quality. So you've got a way to keep getting rid of them, but this was the first time we saw those green troops in play. They kind of mess with everything. Not just, you know, they affect your die rolls, but they also mess with your battle results at the end and all kind of stuff like that. And the thing that's kind of weird is just a tiny amount of solid troops allows you to like stiffen your line perfectly well. So you can have an almost all recruit army, you know, and it fights just as well as one with just one recruit, as long as it's almost all recruits. If it's all recruits, it doesn't fight it fights twice as badly, basically. Let's see if I can remember. I'll use the white dice for the French here to roll my thingies. We get a 6 for the French. They're not going anywhere. And a 9 for the Prussians. They're not going anywhere. Still have all those penalties. But yeah, this was not an attack the Prussians wanted to make. I should not have tried the initiative on it. All right, so I dug in. There's 2 command points. I spent another command point, although this may be a waste because I get sort of a free reorganization at the end of the turn, and we're kind of running low on points at this point. There's going to be maybe 1 or 2 more die rolls, and then it might be over. But I spent point to put a couple of the 2 reinforcing corps under the army command, and that I can do that. I have this is kind of confusing because I have 2 divisions there, but I have 6 corps, which is within the limits that can carry. I spent my remaining point on pulling another mobile unit in, which I mean, if I've got one, I might as well have two, right? But yeah. The other thing I was considering, instead of that, I could have spent 2 command points and removed one of my kind of iffy leaders. So I have some crappy leaders. I don't want to get rid of him because he's an Empire leader. But this guy over here in charge of the guard, I'd like to get rid of him. But to remove him from the game would cost me 2 activation, 2 command points, 2 initiative points, I believe. Definitely 2 command points. And then I'd have to spend another command to appoint a leader there. And I might get someone just as lousy, but the point being that, well, at least I have gotten one of the lousy leaders out of the game. The other problem with that is it costs victory points. So if I removed a core commander, even just to the available pool, that's a victory point. But it's 3 points to remove them from the game. That seems like a pretty hefty cost, although anyone with a minus on them is really kind of a pain in the butt because they're removing some of my pluses. And one of the things that's making the French army kick ass is that it's walking into these battles with like +8, and the Prussians really aren't. They're kind of struggling around 0, a little higher if they get the artillery, but this last time the artillery crapped out. The thing that they've been counting on is the casualties from the artillery. They're just not up to snuff, I guess, and I'm not quite sure what I should be doing. Certainly slamming into the French line doesn't seem like the right answer, but the forces are all positioned to do that. Luxembourg's in a place I can't enter, and trying to expend a lot of effort to get down here, well, the French can just shift, Game seems to have gotten a little smaller. Unfortunately, my pet, the wind, came in and flipped the one board. I don't know if it's recoverable or not. It may involve looking at videos to try to figure out, because the problem is some of this is on the tracks. Most boards don't do this. I'm not sure why this one was particularly flyable. Certainly didn't have a lot of counters on it, which is part of it, but usually, they lift up a little bit, make a mess, but they don't just go flying all by themselves. Funny, I would have expected these guys to go first, but the board is very, very light material. Mostly fixed. Did find out I made an error. Luckily, the camera captured a couple of important things, mainly the location of these counters. But this counter is the Paris mobile. I've been taking mobile units from that and putting them in the French army. And, well, they lost a mobile unit, so I don't know what's going on, because I think I may have created one. I have no fucking clue. Let's get rid of this instead to even that out. I don't know. But, wherever the mobile unit track is, whatever's in Paris, I think we can ignore those. Those are mistakes that are probably pretty minor compared to the strategic blunders that I'm going to make and have already probably made throughout the game. And this, I put a clip there for whatever good that does, and now I can't fix the map, which is not in the correct place. Okay, so it looks to me like we're on the Prussian impulse here, and I didn't want to restart. I don't know that I want to play, but which has nothing to do with how the game is. I don't think it's a bad game at all. I think it's one that actually appeals to me in a lot of ways. I just don't fucking want to play anything. And after about 20 minutes of trying to look up and figure out what I'm doing, I had it in my head, and I just ended up doing this, that, well, I rallied this, but I also wanted to start a siege here of Strasbourg. Unfortunately, with the French forces still here, I can't commit an army down that way. But I do have a couple loose divisions. So I built a pontoon bridge, which is under the railway there, and then moved down. I need this railhead because that's French. I need this railhead, and I can't cross here because it's right into Strasbourg. You can't run across the rail and hit the city right away, or the fortification right away. And I need this railhead. It's a little crowded, but anyway. I ended up spending, I think, all my discretionary points to do that, which is a shame because I need discretionary points to move my siege guns, right? I'm not going to be able to set up a siege this turn. I would have really liked to, but the French are too tenacious up here. And I don't have the kind of force to threaten to the south particularly well. So I feel like I'm failing miserably with the Prussians, to tell you the truth. I just rolled off my comparison, but here's where I don't think the game works. A turn ends on one of two conditions. Either when this rolls out, or when both sides are out of strength points on their chart, of which you can create some more, but that's not a big deal, and command points. Okay, well that's very much like the original design was, but let's say I don't want the turn to end. I never spend my last command point or whatever, and instead I just keep spending these emergency reinforcement points, which just take IPs. They don't take any command points, and I play out the game. You know, I make sure that every turn that I want to be long generates a lot of command points. Is that really that terrible? I don't know. But I was thinking, oh, the end's in sight. Well, one side at least doesn't want the end in sight. The French probably want this turn to end, so they could spend all their activities. But the Prussians definitely don't. So they're just going to delay the game and drag it out. And now, that's why the von Molt counter is in place, etc. But what you have is, again, it's not broken, it's just very, very different from the original game. One of the nice things about the original game was you didn't know how long a turn was going to last. Well, here, you know, it lasts as long as you like, as long as you keep it open. That's just the Prussians. I mean, unless the French think the Prussians are going to screw up at this point, which playing solo, now that I know I'm not going to, well, it means the French sitting on, you know, and they've got 2, 3, 4 command points available to them, I think. What is under here? Yeah, I looked at that. They don't really want to spend them either, because if they know the Prussians aren't going to spend their points, well, I don't have anything terribly that I want to do. Now, under the American Civil War, well, the Civil War, sorry, you know, if you were in this kind of position, in a good defensive position or whatever, you'd say, sure, I'll burn through my points because the enemy can't do anything with what he's got, basically. But in this situation, I know the enemy's going to play it out. I know we're going to see the turn only end through this die roll, and that can be delayed by von Moltke. Well, then I might as well not spend those, and I might as well develop myself some more troops. This is going to be a very, very long game. Okay, this is killing me. There aren't many things, you know, most things in the system, other than, I mean, the actual system as opposed to the presentation. Most things in the system I've been able to look at and say, yeah, you know, I kind of like this. I'm not used to it yet. I've gone through 2 impulse rolls where nothing's happened. I mean, people are just generating replacement points. So basically, the game's on hold until somebody can roll doubles, until the pair rolls doubles. Because neither, the French want the turn to end, but they can't play their pieces. Because if they play them, they're at a disadvantage because the Prussians don't want it to end and they will not play their pieces. So it comes down to, hey, store up your points because there's no way, we're automatically going to get this first roll. And the thing is, we got to do doubles 1, 2, 3, 4 times maybe. With von Moltke, chances are that's the case. In order to, on this first turn, this is going to take, there are very few turns in Civil War that go the full distance. It just almost never happens. Sometimes there's an extra roll or something, but they're almost always ending because people run out of points. This is going to take fucking forever to do a turn. Now, there are less turns than there are in Civil War. There's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 14, 16 turns. I think there's 27 in Civil War. So, it's on the order of about a half. And I thought, well, this is a little more complicated. It'll take about the same length of time. No. This is going to take 4 or 5 times as long because of this stupid track, There's always going to be someone who wants the turn to extend, I think, unless you're worried that the extra die roll victory point penalties towards the end of the track are not worth it. Like, the advantage is yours, but you don't want to pay that, and I think it's just 1 point, for that extra set of impulses. And that could happen. But I mean, in general, this is going to be 4 or 5 times as long as what was already not a terribly short game. Civil War, and I'm counting it with the Western expansion. Civil War took probably close to 20 hours to play. This is going to be a fucking huge monster. I mean, I'm just not sure I've got that much in for this small, what almost feels like an operational system, but with a lot of detail in the combat. But there's nothing outside of that. There's the political rules and stuff, but it's not like Le Grand Guerre that just grabs me and says, yeah, you're willing to put the hours into this, which is kind of the worry, of course, I have with the OCS stuff, the really huge stuff. Am I willing to put that much time into what turns out to be an operational game? I don't know. But this one scares me. This one really does scare me. I forgot about one rule. I haven't violated it yet because everybody's been pulling in a replacement point. But you have to, maybe I violated because I take it as the free replacement point, and the delays would have been different. And in fact, the French might be fine spending their points. You have to bring a strength point on the map or spend a CP every impulse that you get. So there is a burn down. It's less strict than the Civil Wars, but I think it still fits into that kind of, these turns are going to take about twice as long, maybe a little longer than that, which probably puts it on the same time scale, which is fine. And I don't mind a 20-hour game. When I was looking at this being 50, 60 hours, I'm like, oh boy. Ouch. The overall solution seems to be that both sides, because the French don't have anything they really want to spend their points on either, are just spending 1 command point per activation. In fact, the Prussians didn't even spend 1. They took their Landwehr as their guaranteed point. They don't really want to be taking Landwehr, but, I might as well get it deployed somewhere. And it's in a corps here. I put it in the Saxon 12th that doesn't really have... it's with the 10th Corps, so I've got... it's in the same army. It took me a long time to find it, these damn counters. But anyway, the turns are going to be longer, but they're not going to be essentially infinite. Eventually, somebody will run out, but there's the chance that by delaying like this, and only one side has to do it, that we'll get the doubles and we'll get to get more activations in, because Prussia just does not feel comfortable with what they've done so far. They have enough points, I think, maybe not. I don't think they can even rally this hex, because they have like a couple of core, a couple of cav divisions in there, so they can't do it that way, and it's 2 armies, and that adds up poorly. So I just don't even have the points that I could rally it, which would be one consideration. The French rallied this thing, and I know nothing's happening. I'm just the game is all about, at this point, trying to game these die rolls to a much, much greater extent than I've ever seen it happening over in Civil War. But it's no worse than like CDG hand management or anything like that. It just stops kind of making sense. It's like they took the system that you had these kind of fuzzy ideas in the Civil War that it might not work, but it kind of holds up throughout it. And here it starts feeling really alien. And I just realized a bug in my processing. I have been removing these when they're out of points to help remove some of the distraction, because they're either on the board and they look really stupid on the board. They'll attract my attention to, I can get commands there, and then I have to do these lookups on all the tracks and everything. Or they're with the army, and again, if they're with the army, they're going to cause some problems. But what happens when I roll doubles? Well, I'm going to hope that I don't, because I've removed these, but I can probably, piece together, especially since I have the video, where things were. I kind of know. So let's see, this one's attached to the army. This is what's weird, is like what's with an army and what's not is kind of odd. But I think the Army of the Rhine has this third one here, so I should put that there. For the Prussians, I think the primary was back here somewhere, or here actually, able to command those units. The tertiary, I suspect, was with the Third Army over here, so I'll put that there. And I'll have it flipped over so it doesn't confuse me, but then, I may not be able to find them when I need them. Turns out there's a serious disadvantage to running out of points in a turn, at least unless the rules need a clarification here. The initiative players, that's whoever has the activation, because it's the non-initiative, does the same thing. Half of the segment ends when they have expended the required amount of IPs, or they've expended all CPs and entered all available SPs. The IPs may not be saved. There's no special case here. So the French are in a position where they have no points. The Prussians got the initiative. They played their points out. They still have 1 point remaining and a military unit. So they can drag this out 2 more die roll sets, basically. They managed to get a unit built. But that means the French are not going to be able to make any more progress on this infantry unit. They can't spend the IPs because their segment has just ended. They have no points left. You got to be careful how you time things, but in this case, that's not the issue. The issue is I just don't have the points. Made it to the end of a turn. 16 more to go. Not entirely, but we're close. We've ended the action phase. The Prussians were able to burn up some additional points and get some additional production in play. There's no sieges going on, so no siege resolution phase. We go to the rally phase, and here things are worded a little differently from where they are elsewhere in the rules. Here they're worded similarly to the Civil War, and I'm going to play it this way because it's what I'm used to. Any units with demoralized forces lose an SP, and then if they're in supply, they get it back. Now, they get rid of the demoralization. Now, I remember seeing elsewhere where it was worded in a way that seemed to imply something different. which is in the rally phase. Okay, demoralized units that are in movement supply recover in one of two ways. In the rally phase, all demoralized units in the hex lose 1 SP and recover, which is an indication. The way this is phrased, I would say nothing happens to you if you're not in supply. However, the sequence of play corresponds better with the Civil War rules and makes more sense. And that's really all that we're going to do. We have one stack. They're going to lose 1 strength point. See if I have any landfare in there. And then otherwise, we push this forward and we get some new stuff in the pools. And what I have to remember is to look up, because there's reinforcement points that, unlike the huge, hey, let's use up, I don't know, half of one of these maps to track all the forces that are coming in throughout the course of the game, which is what the Civil War does. Here, instead, let's use the player aids, and that is perfectly reasonable. Okay.